Hi there, everybody, and welcome back to the Happy Meter podcast. Once again, it's two best friends coming together to talk about the Happy Meter philosophy, the intersection of financial wellness with our life's joys, passions, and interests. And today we have a very special episode because we have with us a very special guest. Justin, I'm going to let you do the honors here.
Sure. So today we have Michael Miller, who is a police officer in Ulster County, which is Ulster Town, which is a upstate New York town, and he's been doing so for the past 9 years. Mike also follows in the footsteps of two of his family members who are also police officers. And one thing amazing about Mike is he has been on this incredible change and renaissance with his financial wellness, and it's pretty remarkable to hear. And so I wanted to bring Mike on to share a little bit about what's going on in his life now and some of the changes that he's made over the past few years with his finances. So I wanted to welcome Mike here to the show. Mike, how are we doing today?
Hey, gentlemen, how are you?
Good.
Doing well.
So Mike, I was thinking about this the other day. We've been friends now, I think, since 2007. So like 13, 14 years now. I remember that we were in the same freshman orientation group way back at Castleton University, a long time way back. You had a ton of hair.
A lot more hair.
Right. A lot more hair and a little less muscles. I look about the same scrawny white guy as always.
So, and Mike, you and I have got to hang out a bunch of times because of my friendship with Justin. This is the most official I've ever seen you. You're decked out in the blues and the uniform with the badge and everything. The glasses on the head are really pulling it together.
It's not me, it's the uniform.
That's right.
So Mike, tell us a little about what is life looking like for you right now with COVID and everything like that? I think a lot of people are curious.
Things have changed a bit for us. Normally, I'm pretty proactive in terms of vehicle and traffic enforcement and DWI. We're not really doing too much of that unless it's necessary. We're not stopping cars for minor infractions, just to limit exposures. As in regards to call response, we're going to the calls that we need to go to, of course. Taking whatever precautions we can. If we believe there to be an exposure, we're using extra protection. And anytime we deal with the public, we're wearing a mask. Anything we can handle over the phone, we will. This is a new thing. We usually go to every single call when somebody calls requesting our assistance. So handling things over the phone is a little bit different. An issue that I've kind of run into is it's tough to read people who are wearing masks. You can't see facial expressions, and it's tough to interpret their true meaning behind things.
Sure.
That's a really, really good point that I hadn't quite thought of. The eyes can tell a lot, but yeah, without the rest of the facial expression, it's hard to read. Do you find realizing that your jurisdiction is particular, do you find that you're outfitted with everything you need? Like when you say masks and gloves, have you been provided with the right kinds of masks, with the right materials to stay safe and healthy?
Yeah, we're given a whole slew of different things. We've got total body suits, Tyvek suits, gloves, booties, in case we're dealing with somebody who is known to have a COVID infection, and N95 masks. And then for normal day-to-day interaction, we use just a standard surgical mask, but we've got an abundance of that material. And it came pretty quickly, and we've had a lot of people reach out and offer various things to help us out too, which has been great.
Nice. Is there anything the average person should think about or do to help support officers around the country?
Just know our limitations and what we can and can't enforce. A lot of these things are guidelines that we can't enforce people not social distancing. We can't arrest them. We can't write them tickets. We can advise them that it's not in their best interest, but a lot of it is just recommendation. So our ability to use our enforcement powers aren't exactly where people seem to think they are.
Sure. So, Mike, just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your journey here. I mean, again, we've met a long time ago, and what's amazing about, your story is I remember in college, you took on a responsibility at a really young age and became a police officer in Vermont really, really young, even before graduating. This was like always a passion for you. You knew exactly what you wanted to do in life right in the beginning. And so I really have always admired that about you. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your career here?
So I went to college, Castleton State University, with Justin Garritt here. And while there, I found out I could become a police officer at a young age. I applied for and got hired by the Rutland County Sheriff's Office on April 3rd, 2009. And I was 19 years old at the time for 2 more weeks. Yeah. So from there, I graduated college. I spent 2 years at the Rutland County Sheriff's Office. Once I graduated college, I moved back to New York State, at which time I pursued a career at the town of Ulster, where Justin had mentioned before, both my uncle and my father had worked previously. And continued right on into that path, and I've been there ever since I got hired here in July of 2011, and I've been here since as a patrolman. I spent most of my career working the C line, which is 3 to 11 shift. It's a bit busier, and I like to stay active, and it works really well with my life.
Your uncle and your father must be super proud of you, man, following in their footsteps for sure. I've met both of them, and they just glisten about happiness as far as watching Mike kind of come up through the ranks. And I mean, you as a family have served your community so well for so many years. It's pretty awesome. So, kudos to you, man.
They definitely are. I know that they tried for a long time to convince me to go other paths, but now that I'm into it, I know they're proud of me.
That's awesome. So, Mike, what's amazing about your story of the last few years has been kind of your change in mindsets financially. Like, I remember our first few years of friendship, your spending habits were much different than what they look like in the last 3-4 years. So, since college, and for your past now 9 years, 10 years of grown-up life, tell us a little bit about what your financial philosophy was, and then where it's evolved to over the last few years.
Starting out in college, particularly, if I had money, I spent it. If to have $1,000 in my name was a lot of money at the time. You guys still there? Okay.
Yep.
So it was $1,000 was a lot of money to have at the time, and I spent everything I had. I spent a lot of money on schooling too. So I was fortunate to come out of school with minimal debt comparatively, roughly $20,000. And I was able to pay that off pretty quickly. But since then, I took out loans. I used credit cards. I was able to make ends meet. I was never behind on anything, but always trying to keep up. And that was pretty stressful. And it was a stress I never realized I had either.
So what debts did you have at that point? You mentioned your school loan, like $20,000. What other stuff in the beginning where you started to kind of bury yourself a little bit in the beginning? And I remember you always sharing that. Like, what were some of those debts that kind of fell on your shoulders that made you feel stressed?
It was always a credit card. It was always, I was always paid my credit card every 2 weeks, usually, just to stay on top of it. But there were times where it was a stretch and I was just making enough to pay that. And once that was paid, I was then spending more money than I had again, and then playing catch up, and this constant yo-yo back and forth between having enough and then not having enough. And like I said, it just...
Oh, sorry, Mike. It's amazing, that hamster wheel that catches so many people when they first start out on this journey. That, like you mentioned, the idea that you're making the payments, you feel like you're doing what you're supposed to do, but it comes later, the idea that your financial wellness is something that is growing in addition to just covering the debts, like you're saying.
Right. And that change was huge in me to get beyond the just covering today, covering this next bill, but rather allocating my money to the areas that it needs to go and needs to be was phenomenal. And I feel so much better and more free because of it.
Mike, back in the beginning as well, you also bought a pretty nice truck as well. So you had some debt there, or did you pay cash off that?
So when I would say up until about 2019, I was really on the debt train where I didn't mind using debt. I had debt for various things. In 2018, I went through an unfortunate event in my life. I gotten divorced, unplanned by me, of course. And that kind of changed my mindset, because at the time I had double income coming into the house. Sure. I then went to single income, so I had to focus more on my own needs and what I had to do to support my house and fulfill the needs of the house. So I then focused in and started budgeting. With a budget, I found so much extra money that I never knew I had. The big time that really sparked this interest in using a budget, I recall my first time setting up a budget after listening to Dave Ramsey, and he pushes budget. Finally, I do it for the prior month. It's the month of December. I do November's budget, and I had spent roughly $700 at restaurants alone. And it was a huge shock to me that I had spent that much money, because you spend $60 at a clip, or 70, 80, 100 even, and you don't realize how much money you're actually, over the course of only 1 month, you're spending on that. And it's real big wake-up call.
Like, tell me about the process the first time you did your budget out, right? So you wrote everything out and you realize, oh, I'm spending $700 in your one of your categories, which was food at that period of time. What other things did you find during then, and like, what did that feel like?
Well, I total with the food category, between food, alcohol, and groceries, like restaurants, alcohol, and groceries, was roughly $1,200 that month. Um, Unbelievable. I can't fathom that. I mean, the amount of money, I'm half my paychecks going into that alone. So that was the biggest wake up call. So what I did was I just cut everything back, said I'm not going out to eat anymore. I'm going to save money where I can and cut costs where I can. And that's what I did. And I cut it down very, very strict in a very short period of time too.
Gotcha. So what was the light switch before that, though, that went off for you that said, okay, I know you mentioned a little bit about that you were moving down to a single income
Yep.
household, so you had to make some changes. But what that sometimes doesn't do it either for a lot of people. Like, what do you remember a time that you recalled and you look back and said, like, oh, this was a time where I needed to really get my act together? Do you remember any times that was the case?
I do. I'm kind of a nerd about numbers, so occasionally I'll go through and calculate numbers. And when I did that, even just on a spreadsheet, it wasn't using any sort of budgeting apps. I realized that I was spending more money in a month than I was actually making, and I had savings that covered it, so I never had an issue. So that was a pretty big wake-up call for me too. Is that that's not a sustainable lifestyle.
Yep. And the budget really allowed you to see that, it sounds like. By you taking the time and to put it on paper, you can literally see how much money you're bringing in, how much money is going out, and you saw at that period of time, crap, I don't even have not only do I not have a surplus, I'm not even breaking even right now. If I continue with this track, all I'm going to keep doing is going into debt. And so once you did that, what were some of the big, massive changes that immediately you took place with your spending? What were some things you cut? And like, what were some helpful hints that you would share with people about their budget?
So I was always in the mindset that working my shift, I worked 3 to 11, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. I always wanted a hot meal. That, dinner's kind of was always a big thing in my family. So I ate out probably 4 nights a week. We would do takeout in various restaurants in town. And at $5 or $10 a shot was adding up quickly. So I cut that out completely. I no longer eat out at work at all. I've kind of set this golden rule for myself that there is zero more eating out at work. So if I don't bring it, I don't eat it. That's been huge. And then limiting myself how much I go out. I mean, right now, obviously we can't go out to dinner, but if I go once or twice a month now, rather than once or twice a week, I can set myself a budget for that. I can do $100 for a month, or I think about $150 for a month for restaurants.
So it doesn't sound like you like starved yourself here and like completely cold turkey. You made a few decisions like, hey, I'm spending way too much money in this category. It's not leading to me some of the goals that I want to hit. So you slashed a little bit off of that. You kept some in your budget, but you took a big chunk of that $700 and reduced it down to $200, which means you found an extra $400 or $500 per month in your budget.
Exactly. And it was pretty easy to do. I don't find the budget limiting at all. It just tells me what I can and can't do, and kind of a roadmap for what I'm going to do for the next month.
I love
it. Rather than going back and seeing what I had done the previous month, I've mapped out where I will be going rather than where I've been.
Have you found that you've ever fallen off your budget and then had to go back and reevaluate? Or do you find that you've been pretty consistently and objectively on budget this whole journey?
So again, I'm kind of a nerd with the numbers. So at the end of each month, I plug into a spreadsheet the actual value that I've spent each month. And then with that, I have the averages over the course of months, and they've changed. They've gone up, gone down. Groceries have gone up a little bit this month because we're not eating out, but restaurants have gone down. So it's just rebalancing and making that all work.
So, Kevin, if you remember, I think episode 3 or 4, we talked about financial basics. And like right now, what Mike just discussed was number 1, which was figure out your cash flow by writing a budget that's connected to your values, right? So Mike literally wrote this down and realized, oh, I'm spending some things in this category that may not be bringing me ultimate happiness. Let's cut a little bit of that so that I can go towards my next goals. So number 2 was to pay off debt. So Mike, what was that first, once you finally realized that you had this extra gap now that because you were spending less, what was the step that you took there with that extra money per month?
I got to thank you for that. You actually drove me to take this massive leap. I paid off my truck. I had the cash to do so. I paid off my truck, $24,000 that I had saved up, and I then later had other debts that were zero interest. I had redone the roof on my house, which was about $4,000. I had bought a new couch, which I paid off before I even got the first bill for it. and I had the money to do so. And what I found was I just gave myself more money each month because I don't have a predetermined amount that's leaving before I even do anything in the month. And that's been huge. And the ability to do so was unbelievable. And
So you
not
cleared your
having,
debt?
yes, yep, debt free.
Gotcha.
Congratulations. Awesome.
I do have a mortgage. I have to admit, I have a mortgage, but that's okay. It doesn't kill the budget.
So this is one of my favorite questions to ask is, what happened when you knocked your expenses down, right? And you have an extra bit of money, and then now at that period of time, you have nothing else to do with it except save. Like, your debt's gone now. So this surplus every month, like what does that feel like? And like, what was the next steps from there?
So I actually did it this morning. I just got my paycheck. Every time I get paid, I have an allocation of multiple accounts inside of my bank, special savings accounts. And anything that falls outside of my normal monthly budget, say my car insurance every 6 months, I'll put a predetermined amount into that account for the car insurance. So when the car insurance comes, I have the $600 in that account. I transfer that out to pay my car insurance, and it's done. I don't stress about when that comes, how I'm going to make that payment. The other thing I've done is significantly and drastically increase my contributions to the New York State Deferred Comp. I'm trying to hit my maximum of 19.5 for the year, at 32% right now. I'm still trying to play catch up, so I'm sure I'm going to probably run a little bit shy, just because I'm a little behind, and they don't allow you to go over what the max would be, and you're constantly trying to catch up. But on top of that, when you convinced me to pay off my truck, my payment was roughly $400 a month. I took that $400 and divided it per week, and I put an extra $100 a week into BTSAX, and that's just a long-term savings plan for me.
Awesome. And for listeners out there, what he just referred to was a index fund, which is the total stock market index fund in Vanguard. So wanted to add that to it. So Mike, so you are at the point then, you made your budget, your mindset shifted a lot, you paid off your debt, and then you built a small emergency fund, which we've talked about. You mentioned like, hey, how much money should I have in there? And then you were at the point where, okay, I now can start saving towards your goals and start seeing money work for you. So you did two things. One is you put some money every week going into a taxable investment account that's going to grow, that you could access within the next 10, 15 years. But then you also put a substantial amount of money into your deferred compensation plan. And for the listeners out there, our last two episodes, we went into detail about those plans. So Mike puts money pre-tax into these retirement accounts now that are going to build and build and build throughout the course of your career. So now you're at this point, Mike, where do you want to go?
So I like the idea of the financial independence and freedom. I love my job. It's stressful at times, but I like the idea that when I hit my 20 years, when retirement comes, that if I still love my job, I can stay doing what I'm doing. If I'm not happy, if the stress has become too much from the job, then I can leave. I don't want to be tied to this job because I'm not able to pay my bills. I want to have enough saved up between my pension, which is a really great asset to have, and then also this deferred comp that I can just do as I need to do for me and not for my bills.
Awesome. So what does financial independence, what would it look like for you?
It would just be the freedom to do what I want when I want. And I don't necessarily mean like a spoiled child, but rather if I decide I don't want to be a police officer anymore and I want to pursue another career, I don't see myself retiring at 43 and going out and sitting on a couch for the next 40 years. I'm sure I'd probably do another career somewhere. But I would like to have that freedom if that's what I decide to do, or if I decide to stay another 10 years on top of that, I can do that. And it'll give me the opportunity to make the decision rather than being forced to make that decision.
So your first kind of 9 or 10 years of career, you were kind of going through this, you were spending, you were figuring things out. And then the last 2 years or so, you've kind of made some massive changes in budgeting. And now you're at the point where you're just on automatic, motivated autopilot on maxing these counts out, right? And so and 10 years from now, 9 years from now, you'll be 20 years into the police force, right? So you'll You already have 20 years in. And at that period of time, you would qualify if you wanted to step away for a pension. You'd get like around half of your salary or so, right? That you can work on. And then at that point, if you saved up in this deferred compensation plan over time, what's going to be an amazing thing is you'll have the pension to live off of. Plus, you're going to have this investment account where you can pull a certain amount off of every single year to supplement the pension that you have. And that's what we're talking about with financial independence for you, Mike, is you're going to have this, again, set contribution coming out for your pension. And because of the savings you're doing right now, $19,500 a year, which I'm assuming you'll do over the next 9 years, you're going to have a nice lump sum of money where you can have the freedom to make a lot of different choices that I think a lot of coworkers may not be able to do in 20 years in. And it's a remarkable story, especially I know 5-6 years ago, this was not the case. And it's amazing to watch this happen. And it's from afar, Mike, it's amazing.
It's been quite the transformation, and it feels great, honestly. Feels great. I didn't make more money. I mean, we have slow step raises, very small dollar amounts per year. So it was no drastic change in that time period. The big change was the change in the spending. If you limit your spending, you make more money.
So Mike, now that we know some of your financial journey, where you've been, as well as the direction that you're heading and where you hope to go, I'd love to shift a little bit and do a little bit of sort of happy meter anecdotes where you can share with us real examples of balancing financial wellness with the things you really care about. So I'm wondering, what's a moment when you look back on that journey you've just shared with us, that there was some kind of expense, and maybe it was a lot, but that it actually did meet your happy meter? Like it is something looking back, you're glad you did.
So I was never really big into traveling as a kid. We did quite a bit of traveling, but a lot of it was camping. And we went and visited family. I was fortunate enough when I was young, we did a cross-country trip. It was 6 weeks long. And I don't think I was old enough to really appreciate that because I was, I think, 12 years old. So I didn't really have that opportunity to appreciate as much as I could have. But more recently, I've been able to travel all over the world. And I found that my best memories are all in the time that I've spent with friends, time I've spent with family, and time traveling, and especially on the beach.
Nice. Where's some of the beach?
Well, that 3-day trip to Martinique with Justin and our other friend Bart was pretty incredible.
Heard a few stories.
Thailand beaches were unbelievable. The Caribbean, Bahamas, and anything having to do with the beach, I'm in. And I actually just planned a trip to Amelia Island in Florida. So a little getaway after all this COVID stuff. That's
awesome. So I agree with you. I know Justin does too, that even though travel is an expense, it's something that is always valuable and moves our happy meter. I know you shared a couple, especially with eating out, which is something that when I started doing my budgets, I realized I too was wrecking my savings with eating out and that sort of thing. What's something when you look back with your new priorities that you can't believe you spent money on? Like now that you're thinking more happy meter, what's the balance, that you look back and you think, geez Louise, that was foolish.
So I can't believe I'm saying this, but my truck, I still have the truck. I've actually considered selling it. I don't know if I have the strength to do so. When I bought my truck, it was 2 years old. I got a phenomenal deal on it. It was about $10,000 under the cost of the vehicle. And I could have gotten a truck probably $10,000 less than what I paid that would fit my needs. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of money tied up in my driveway, a lot of money that I could have been investing otherwise. But at the time I could afford the payment, and that was my thought, rather than where that money could have been in 20, 30, 40 years. And at times what I'll do is I'll look at a calculator, and it's just rough estimates, but rather than buying a $150, $200 pair of sneakers, I'll look at where that $200 would be in 30 years. And the thousands of dollars that turns into is not worth a pair of sneakers.
Mike, you literally can jump on our podcast anytime because this is exactly what we've talked about. Can we look back on our first 2 episodes? We really talked about this philosophy of the happy meter and like writing down the things that bring you the most joy. And when Mike wrote that down, and ours actually pretty much matches right along. Like we love sharing different experiences with friends and family. And when you write that down, the fancy new truck doesn't really hit that list, and it will actually take away from you from hitting those memories forever, right? Because your money is going towards that versus those other experiences and saving. And the 2 most popular things in America is spending too much on food, if you're our age, and 2, that car or truck payment. And Mike fell for those early on, and he overcame those because mistakes are going to happen. And now he's just on a full-on trek towards reaching financial independence. It's an amazing story, and I love it.
Yeah. And if we have time, I have just one last question for Officer Mike here. What advice do you have for anyone who's new to this process, but especially to young officers who are beginning their careers?
Good question, actually. I'm fortunate enough to be a field training officer here. And since I've gone through my transformation, I've had the ability to share that information with others, and I kind of force it on people when they're riding with me.
Mike calls me at all random hours whenever he's got finance questions and someone's sitting right next to him in the car.
Yeah, we're trying to get everybody on board here. Some are a little bit more resistant, but so I've had the opportunity. I've set up probably 6, 8, 10 different deferred comps, and it's people that keep telling me I wanted to do it, I'm going to do it. So I force them to go get the paperwork, and I sit down with them and fill it out and tell them to put a stamp on the envelope and send it into New York State. Because sometimes people need that push, and even if it's just 3 or 4%, that's where I started, and I wish I had started at 25% looking back, but I didn't. So now I'm playing catch up. But if I can get them started, then once that's started and they're able to access it online, I see that they're able to change their contributions pretty regularly. And the way that I had done it, I kind of tell people they should is every time you get a raise, every year you get a raise, then use that, do an extra percentage. It's easy. You never see it out of your budget until you're ready to really truly commit to this whole financial independence thing.
Part of what I'm hearing there, Mike, is just how important it is to be a mentor, and also how important it is for all of us to get more comfortable talking about finance. If we're not talking about it, then you easily fall into bad habits and you get stuck in that hamster wheel. But by sharing your personal stories with others, we're all able to help each other grow. So those young officers are really lucky to have you.
Yeah. I wish I had somebody giving me that advice when I first started, because you get advice from all over the place of people saying that invest here, invest there. And I still fall victim to it. Every once in a while, I'll call Justin for a little, bring me back to ground here. And Justin, should I invest in this? They're saying that I should do this. What about this? And he kind of levels me out and reminds me of the final goal, and gets me right back on track.
Awesome. Mike, Kev, do you want to do that? I really want to do that last closing activity with us.
Oh, do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay, so with the last little bit of time that we have, I want to do something that I'm calling a happy meter memory. So this would be a chance for you to share like a win, financial and at the balance of your needs and everything else, to share with everybody else. So is there a recent financial choice that in terms of happy meter stuff is a real win? Like it moved your meter and it was also financially responsible. I don't know if you guys had a chance to think about it. I'll start. So in the midst of COVID and everything else, my roommates and I have agreed that we are actually going to stay away from grocery stores altogether. And we've been using an app called Instacart, so that we're minimizing how many people are in the shopping areas and all that sort of thing. And they bring it to you. So I'll try not to get in the weeds too much because it'll end up embarrassing me. But I'm going through when I'm keeping on diet, what do I need? It's a ton of stuff like soups and other canned goods, as well as meat and things to cook with. And I was going to go to Safeway, just do one order with a $5 fee. But usually I shop at Aldi, which is way cheaper, but doesn't have all of the stuff I was going to want. And I think Justin would have been proud. I did a quick calculus of how many, in particular, canned mushrooms I was going to be purchasing. And I found that I was going to recoup more than the cost of an additional service fee going to Aldi than if I had gotten the same product at Safeway. So I put it simply, at Aldi, there's this product I was going to get about 7 of them. It cost 48 cents, something like that. And at Safeway, the same product with a different brand name was going to cost closer to $1.20. So I ended up doing the 2 trips, ended up saving a little bit of money, and it forced this humble English teacher to do some math. And I'm probably better for it.
Mike, we talk about Aldi's on the show all the time, which is a supermarket chain down by us. You guys have Aldi's down there or no?
I love it. That's the only place I shop.
Oh, okay. It is spread all over. Good. We love it.
I've been doing the shopping for my parents because they're susceptible, a little bit older. And so I do their shopping at ShopRite, and I do my shopping at Aldi's, making 2 trips because it's just a better deal. It's worth it. It's the same stuff.
Right.
What's the biggest item disparity you see shopping for your parents versus going for yourself at Aldi? Like, is there any one item that's sold at both and you just can't believe the disparity?
Off the top of my head, I don't have anything, honestly.
What's mine, Kev?
You've got a couple. I know lettuce is a huge one. Is that? Oh my goodness, what's the other one?
Tostitos chips. Tostitos. Tostitos are like $3 or $4 typically for a bag, and I love salsas and chips. Love it. If you get salsa and the bag of Tostitos at Walmart or another place, it's like $4 for salsa and another like $3 or $4 for the bag. Versus at Aldi's, it's 89 cents for almost the same chips and $1 for the salsa. So
cannot tell a difference.
I can't too much, and I have salsa and chips like daily. So
I do have one actually. Now that I think about it, they make those pre-made salad kits in a bag.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're $2.89 at Aldi's, whereas they're like $4 something at ShopRite for the same exact brand, same exact bag.
And if you're buying that every day, for sure, that's a lot of money every day added up.
Yep.
Yeah. Mike, do you have any big financial wins to share?
I do. My girlfriend's staying with me for a couple of weeks, and we both decided we're going to be doing keto. About a week in now, feeling great. And so without not eating out, we do meal prepping. I just did meal prep on keto, making 10 meals for $20. So that's 5 days of meals for two of us at $2 a piece.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And
What
it was sausage, onions, and peppers. And believe me, you're full after it. It's no short meal.
Nice. What I did is I realized that at the end of April, I had quite a bit of money in my bank account because my budget was significantly lower than in previous months because of COVID. So all the money that I would typically spend on eating out, maybe the $200 there and gasoline and all these things were not included in my budget anymore. And so now that I know that this is an ongoing thing, at least for this month and probably next, I re-looked at my budget and I saw how much extra money I'm going to have per week. And I readjusted my automatic contributions to my taxable investment account. And so that went up $150 every 2 weeks extra now going in. And so it just using this opportunity of me spending less money and making sure the money works for me. So I just set that up the other day.
I do mine a little bit more of an accidental. I keep about $1,500 in my checking account at the end of each month to cover bills going forward. And anything over that $1,500, I transfer over. So it's not as planned as yours is, but kind of the same idea.
I love it. Love it.
Nice. As we start running out of time here, Mike, Justin, do you guys have any final words for our audience?
No, Justin, it's your show. Go ahead.
No. I just want to thank you for coming on, Mike. And I know for the past 2 years, I have really enjoyed how our friendship has blossomed over this common interest. And I remember the beginning stages of you and of what to pay off first and what to do. And then I remember the first time you wrote your budget and how excited you were to finally actually see, you gave yourself a raise without even giving yourself a raise because you realized you were putting money in different areas. And I watched you into paying off debt, and we celebrated your debt-freeness, I'll say, last year and last summer, which was really a highlight of my summer. And then over the past year and a half, watching you go from contributing a few percentages of your annual income into your deferred comp to now trying to max it out. I mean, it's only been like 2 years of that, Mike. And to look back, I mean, how cool. And what you're doing to set yourself up 10 years from now, it's amazing. And so I hope you come back once you hit your, a milestone of yours, or definitely 9 years from now when you reach financial independence, which I think you actually will before that, and come and keep us up to date on your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on, and anytime you want me to come back and chat, I'm willing to do so. This was kind of fun.
Thanks for your time, Mike. Thanks for everything you're doing to keep people safe up there in New York. And from everyone, thanks for listening. This is the Happy Meter Podcast. We hope you stay safe, healthy, and happy out there.
All right. Bye, everybody.